66% of Americans now say that groceries are, in fact, not affordable.
More Americans are turning to buy now, pay later finance plans to pay for groceries.
2/3 of people working are living paycheck to paycheck.
Credit card debt just reached a record high of $1 trillion, and more people are making emergency withdrawals from their retirement accounts.
If you've been wondering why it feels like you're working just as hard, but getting further behind, you're not alone. Because while the headlines have been talking about a strong economy, a very different story is unfolding underneath them. By the end of this video, you'll understand how both of these realities can exist at the same time, and why millions of Americans are living in a completely different economy than the one making the headlines. The US economy grew for another consecutive quarter in early 2026, continuing its expansion despite elevated interest rates and persistent inflation. The Bureau of Economic Analysis said the increase came from exports, investments, consumer spending, and government spending. Part of this matters because the economy was weighed down in the previous quarter by the longest federal shutdown ever, and the labor market tells a similar story. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the economy added 172,000 jobs in May, while unemployment remained unchanged at 4.3%. These job gains came from hospitality, local government, and healthcare, while financial services declined. Part of the improvement could come from the economy recovering from the previous shutdown, but it was a labor market still adding jobs. That lines up with how the Federal Reserve has been describing it. In May, Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller said recent job data showed that the labor market was stabilizing and that unemployment has remained fairly low. So the labor market is no longer red hot, but it's still holding together. At the same time, the asset side of the economy has been extremely strong. The S&P 500 has roughly tripled over the last decade, with stocks near all-time highs. Your portfolio is up, your net worth is higher, and home values are still much higher than where they were before the pandemic. According to the Federal Housing Finance Agency, housing prices are still on the rise in the first quarter of 2026. This matters because millions of homeowners locked in low-rate mortgages before interest rates surged, giving them less reason to sell. Today, the average mortgage rate is more than double, sitting at the mid-6% range. That difference can be massive. For some homeowners, your balance sheet could look a lot stronger than where it was a few years ago. But that's also what makes this economy so misleading. These headlines don't account for how much room households have left after this money is spent. And this is where the story starts to change. While spending was still rising, the personal savings rate fell to 2.6%. This does not mean that 2.6% of Americans are saving. This means that after taxes and spending, households are saving 2.6% of their income, a much smaller share. And once the leftover money gets smaller and smaller, households have less ways of dealing with the next bill without borrowing. For a lot of households, this spending goes on credit cards. Americans owed on their credit card balances $1.25 trillion as of the first quarter of 2026. The problem is not just the balance, it's the cost of carrying it. The average credit card rate is around 21%, and the New York Federal Reserve has data that shows that pressure is moving into late payments. In the first quarter, early credit card delinquencies were still 8.6%. This means that balances are still falling behind at an elevated rate, and the flow into serious credit card delinquency was about 7.1%. This is a deeper stage where balances are moving into the 90 days late territory. The card gets swiped and the transaction goes through. The store gets paid and the economy records the activity. But inside the household, it feels different. Spending still happened, but the household behind it got weaker. Credit cards catch the shortfall month to month, but auto loans are different. They can lock that inflationary pressure in people's budgets for years. A lot of people bought cars during the inflation spike, when prices were high, supply was tight, and monthly payments were already moving up. According to JD Power, the amount of vehicles selling above MSRP hit 48% in July 2022. So even if the car market looks more normal today, some households are still paying for the market that they bought into years ago. And some households are also carrying negative equity, meaning that they owe more than the car is actually worth. According to Edmunds, roughly 30% of trade-ins towards a new vehicle had negative equity at the end of 2025. If your payment is too high, but you owe more than the car is worth, it becomes hard to escape. That inflation spike may be in the past, but the monthly payment is still hitting today. This is why the explosion of buy now and pay later can be so devastating. On paper, buy now, pay later can look harmless, and a lot of it is 0% APR. The payments are split up into multiple pieces, and it feels easier than putting it on a credit card. Federal Reserve researchers found that buy now and pay later companies lended out over $160 billion in 2025. And the Fed's household survey found that nearly 16% of adults use buy now and pay later that year. This means that this is not some tiny payment option anymore. 1 in 5 users are using it for groceries or food delivery. This is everyday expenses getting pushed to next paycheck. The Fed also found that 11% of buy now and pay later users had a payment trigger an overdraft fee from their bank account. So even if the buy now, pay later loan is 0% interest, the household can still get pushed further behind. A $400 purchase split into 4 payments might not sound like a big deal, but if somebody is already struggling and they don't have extra money, that $400 can become a major problem. And this pressure is showing up clearly in young adults. In 2025, 49% of adults under 30 years old live with a parent. That's almost half. And that number says a lot about where the economy is really hitting. The Federal Reserve also found that 47% of adults under 30 received help from somebody outside of their household to pay for an expense. Rent is higher, owning a home is further away, cars are more expensive, and insurance is more expensive. So even when wages rise, it does not mean that they're rising faster than the cost of living. The economy can keep recording spending, but the household behind it is running out of room. So here's what's actually happening. Up until now, it sounds like the data is kind of contradicting itself. The economy looks strong, but yet millions of Americans are falling behind. The reason both of these things can be true is because we're living in what's called a K-shaped economy. One path continues upward while the other falls behind, because not everybody is experiencing this economy the same way. People's situation may look completely different. Your home value may be up, your mortgage rate may be locked in at a low rate, and your stocks might be at record highs as well. But if you're renting, trying to buy your first house, carrying credit card debt, or have an expensive auto loan, this economy might look completely different for you. For that household, their paycheck comes in and more of it is already spoken for. One missed paycheck, one medical bill, or one car bill can throw the whole month off balance. The real takeaway is that financial breathing room is disappearing from the people who already had the least amount to begin with. Higher income households can still make the economy look good from the top down, but underneath that, we are starting to see more and more American households struggling. That is America's $19 trillion secret. The economy can keep recording spending, but the households underneath are running out of room. Thank you so much for watching. I put a ton of work into this video. If you made it to the end, please consider subscribing. It would mean a ton to me, and have a great rest of your day. Peace.